So, Scott Jund released a video the other day about the Resident Evil chapter and how the downside to all of the licenses that Dead by Daylight has access to is that a game in the same genre will have a very difficult, if not impossible, time succeeding because of it. While he's not wrong, we can look at the game and see exactly what another game company would need to do to be successful in the genre.
Space Coconut.
The first thing I want to point out from Scott's video is that he says that the licenses Dead by Daylight has access to are the primary reason they are so successful. This is pretty undeniable, and it can be argued that their original content isn't as well executed as those licenses in the game. Hype for licenses is always larger than that of their original content. The company itself only has one successful game, which is Dead by Daylight. This single successful game might signal the limits to their abilities as a game company. Death Garden was their attempt to duplicate that success, and it ended up in the same place that other attempts in the genre ended up. We can look at all of those failed attempts from other game companies and tell what a game would need to accomplish if it wanted to be successful in this genre without a famous license to carry them. The most important thing the game needs when it's released to the public is to look finished. It can't be in beta, and it can't be in early access unless the only things left to add are more content and simple balance changes. The visuals need to be up to date, the audio should be clean and immersive, and the gameplay should have clear goals and direction with a splash of progression. Valheim, Satisfactory, and the Dyson Sphere program are all examples of what a finished early access game should look and sound like. The only things left to add to those games are more content, engine optimizations, and balance tweaks. If a game looks and sounds like a Steam sale reject, that's how it's going to be received by the general gaming community, even if the game does everything else right. No matter what, this hypothetical game is going to be compared to Dead by Daylight. There is absolutely nothing the game can do to avoid that. The visuals need to be great, the audio needs to be immersive, and the gameplay needs to be clear. With the sensory stuff mentioned, the second most important thing this hypothetical game will need is solid gameplay. Dead by Daylight has had 5 years of development and polish to be in the passable state that it's in right now. Players agree that because of Dead by Daylight's success, the devs have gotten used to doing the bare minimum, which leaves much to be desired when it comes to the gameplay in Dead by Daylight. The fixes and balances most mentioned and requested all have to do with gameplay. To sell copies, behavior instead focuses on licenses and updating the visuals of the game to sell copies to next-gen console players. I mean, they're improving how the Trapper looks, but not looking to improve the quality of life for the character. In the long run, this philosophy is bad for behavior, but good for their competition. If that hypothetical game focuses on the aspects that Dead by Daylight neglects, they can create a game that will take its place in the asymmetrical horror genre based on the quality of the game rather than the big licenses they acquire. The crafting system in Outriders is its biggest success in the game's design. The system is mentioned in all of the reviews as the next gold standard for the genre. It improves on the traditional looter-shooter system by granting more freedom and variety to the player. Valheim improves on the survival genre by implementing MMO aspects to the game, as well as changing traditional food, water, and resting systems by making them more important without making them tediously necessary. Neither of these games do much different than other games in their respective genres, but make improvements to them instead, which makes them successful. Although if I'm being honest, Outriders' success isn't exactly because of the technical successes they've had recently, right? A competitor to Dead by Daylight needs to do the same thing to succeed in the genre, even if they don't intend to directly compete with it. It's easy to highlight the failures of other entries in the asymmetrical horror genre to see what a new entry would need to do at the bare minimum to be successful. Friday the 13th is an amazing license, but legal issues aside, the license alone couldn't keep the game alive. Gameplay is a vital aspect that the developers failed on, and the very reason that licenses won't keep Dead by Daylight safe from competitors if they can improve on what behavior has done. Hide or Die suffered from an identity crisis and went into early access way too early, ruining their first impression and then changing everything about the game trying to make a new first impression. Death Garden wasn't fun for hunters once runners figured out how to bully them. After a series of tweaks, it was impossible to balance because a player's ability to aim was the skill ceiling. If a hunter couldn't aim, they suffered loss after loss and left the game for not having fun. If a hunter had amazing aim, runners felt no hope of escape and left the game not having fun. Resident Evil Resistance had a gameplay loop that was more like playing a dungeon master and lacked direct interaction with their opponents, a gameplay style that wasn't enjoyed by many people. Monstrum 2 released too early into early access and suffered from the audio-visual expectations of an audience hungry for a Dead by Daylight competitor. Even though their gameplay loop had a very unique and exciting system for the genre, learning it was not easy. Predator Hunting Grounds had quite a few problems that I can't quite put my finger on, but that was probably a result of the disjointed gameplay as a whole. They tried to do too much copying and ended up with something else. But like Friday the 13th, the Predator license didn't save the game from its boring, repetitive gameplay. Now, before you give up hope of seeing a new entry into the genre, let me do this. Let's compare Dead by Daylight when it came out to how it is now, and remember that at its release, there was no other game to compare it to. The visuals are dated, there are only 3 killers available, 4 survivors, and no licenses except the clear Jason and Leatherface knockoffs. The animations aren't fluid and impacted the gameplay in a negative way. Remember the palette vacuum? There were clear balance issues within the game that are not present in today's version. Those changes took several months to address, and in some cases, issues that still exist even 5 years later. If 2016 Dead by Daylight came out today, would it still succeed? I doubt it. But in the same way that Valheim took inspiration from other games of the genre and improved them to create a game that shattered records, a dev team can create an asymmetrical horror game that improves on the negative things in Dead by Daylight that the current devs can't improve or simply won't. Making games is complicated, and I'm not going to pretend that it's easy to accomplish. But established games have systems in place that work, and those systems can be emulated and improved upon like a cooking recipe. Dead by Daylight is a successful game and licenses help with that, but it's far from a perfect gaming experience. Improving on those imperfections are the key to creating a game that could dethrone Dead by Daylight as the dominant entry in the asymmetrical horror genre. It's just a matter of a dev team with the capabilities of accomplishing that task, stepping up and doing it. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below, and check out any of my other videos on the channel if you enjoyed this one. Until next time, I'll see you in the fog.